Okay, our International Forum United for Nature agenda for Ukraine continues. We are ready to start with our third panel, that's Natural Resources and Biodiversity. Will be moderated by Alexander Tadorchuk, the founder of UA Animals. Well, first of all, greetings at this wonderful event, and big thanks for all those who managed to drink their coffee till the end and finish the coffee break. So if you're being kept over there, just let us know. We're kind of getting worried if there's spare seats in the front, so please use them to hear us better. For those who are only about to return, you're very welcome to this room, as we'll be talking on a very important topic. Besides, we would need to make this first step in order to show that this word united in our name is truly important. So let's take this first step and get united in this room for the discussion of this very important topic. So it's all about the natural resources and biodiversity. It's a very sensitive topic, very important one, because in the course of the full-scale war, on the one hand, we can see horrible consequences for the environment and biodiversity as the result of Russian aggression, and we are unable to assess the true scales of the damages due to occupation, due to the combat operations. So, we'll have a discussion with our panelists today, and let me introduce them. Alexander Krasnoludsky, the first Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection. Yulia Ovchinnikova, the Member of Parliament of Ukraine. Viktor Smile, the head of the State Agency for Forest Resources of Ukraine. Then Mikhailo Yanchuk, the head of the State Agency for Water Resources of Ukraine. Marina Surkova, the president of the All-Ukrainian Association of Public Organizations, the Association of Animal Protecting Groups of Ukraine, and Serhiy Yerezvenko, the head of the park called Mezhigirya. So, let us start. Please join us in this audience. That's particularly for those still drinking the coffee. Well, not sure if they can hear me, but at least I wanted to make sure they would know that we are about to start. So, a big thing that I wanted to ask to our panelists. We have around 10 minutes for every question on our agenda. So, if we'll have a chance and we'll have time, we'll have a Q&A session. So, the first question to start, that's the question to Alexander Krasnoludsky, the first Deputy Minister of Environmental Protection. So, the question is, what are the current tasks and objectives you have for the protection of biodiversity? Which objectives should be fulfilled on our way to the EU? So, what do we have today? Currently, we have around 9,000 reserved territories of 1.4 million hectares. Then we have another 8.1 million hectares of the territory of Ukraine that are considered as the recreational area. So, as we can see, there's a lot of natural reserves and natural protected areas, but unfortunately, many of those territories are being destroyed, are being mined. That creates certain challenges, not only related due to the war, but because the fact that many territories, they don't have the legal documents and the information is not introduced into the land cadastre register, and this results in some of the allocation of the land plots, which is illegal, and that results in the destruction of these territories. Only 1.2 million hectares of land reserves have all the legally establishing documents. Only part of them, that's 700 7 southern territories are introduced in national cadastre. The rest are not introduced. So that creates certain challenges. In 2023, the territory of natural reserves has increased by the total area of over 12,000 hectares. Besides, as we've mentioned, we've created the park called Межигір'я. What are we planning to do in order to improve at the legislative level the protection of our national reserves and national protected areas? Well, first and foremost, you should be aware that many of the national parks are currently facing the challenge in the form of the land tax, and it is 5% of the kind of a cost estimate, which is a very significant burden for the budget. So basically, whatever they earn, they would need to allocate to pay the land tax. So they have no funds for the development. That is why the Cabinet of Ministers has initiated the amendments to the tax code of Ukraine in order to kind of reduce the land tax to 0.1% of the assessed cost. That would allow to save a significant amount of money earned by the national parks so that this money could be spent on the development of those national parks. I'm very grateful to their committee in the Verkhovna Rada who supported this draft law. The next change is that we're developing a draft law on Natural Reserve Fund. And this draft law, it's all about some prohibitions. There's a problem around the destruction of our territories in Carpathians through jumping. So we've developed the draft law that shall be considered for the consideration of the Cabinet of Ministers and further provided to the Verkhovna Rada. The next draft law, that's on introducing certain amendments to the legislation in order to make it harmonized with the EU regulations. As part of the self-screening, we've focused a lot on biodiversity on national parks. So as the result of this self-screening, we identified this draft law on licensing zoos and others. There's a lot of European directives that are kind of very technical, and we can easily, settle them and fulfill a number of EU directives. So, as the Minister has mentioned, we would need to settle all those technical matters very fast in order to have a normal assessment of the European Commission. Then we'll be introducing some amendments to the legislation, also regulating the national reserves. It's about the establishment of the agency for managing the national reserves. So there is a need for creating that. There's large territories which are considered natural reserves, and it's becoming more and more difficult for the ministry, in part related to the policy making of those territories. So this agency would be doing that. So these are 4 draft laws that I would like to focus your attention. And
so the ministry is busily working on many more legislative acts and bylaws, but I'm not going to steal more of your time for that. So, in terms of natural reserves and parks, 235 international events were carried, more than 200 fires were extinguished, scores of eco-paths were created, more than 3,000 sightseeing tours were carried out, several thousands of lectures carried out. Also, the fund is very instrumental in fighting the poaching. More than 1,700 weapons were taken away from poachers. We intend to further refine the legislative framework. We are going to introduce a cadastre of reserve lands. Actually, the work has already started. We continue feeding information into the cadastre. and we are going to present it soon. Another matter for us is about land plots located in natural reserve areas. We need to prevent the illegal alienation, and this again will require inventory, stock taking of such land plots, and generally the natural reserve areas. A law on preservation of subsided forests has been adopted. And we see steady efforts to increase the square of reserve areas. We also are very keen about recreational opportunities offered by natural reserves and national parks. We want infrastructure of these parks developed, and we'd like really to have more visits, because particularly it will be beneficial also economically for local governments, to local communities, and it will increase health benefits. And also with the view of the ongoing war, we've been contributing to the setting of healthcare rehabilitation centers, and rehabilitation centers are exactly in the reserve areas, and we want to do more on that. In terms of biodiversity, we really are blessed with being more biodiverse than some European countries. Meanwhile, we have almost 700 of red book, so-called regulated species, and unfortunately the number has increased by 145 new species in the last 10 years, which says that the biodiversity matter is of huge concern and should be even more closely monitored. Our plans for 2024 include a range of measures within the meaning of the biodiversity strategy that we are finalizing now. We are going to ratify addendums to Aarhus Convention on GMOs. We are going to refine our methodology of invasive species determination in the animal and plant world, and we want to have exhaustive lists of those to be monitored. We are in contact with animal activists. We want to regulate matters, particularly in respect of animals. We want to reduce the number of endangered species. Internationally, we have had a lot of meetings and events. We had participated in a session of Ramsar Convention member states. We have participated in a range of measures to introduce the Emerald Belt. We participated in the 8th session on the preservation of cetaceans in the Black Sea region. We have had efforts to prevent Russian representatives from further participating in such and like events because of the huge damage to the environment and nature that Russia has been dealing to Ukraine. I hope I managed to squeeze within my time span. Yes, thank you, Alexander. I think it has been just a world record in terms of the number of valuable facts you showered us with. Those willing to get more information, please visit the ministerial website for more details. And thank you for this talk, for what you've been doing. It should be hoped that Ukraine is now capable of thinking about preserving and expanding biodiversity now and after the war, also in line with requirements to Ukraine as a candidate country. And we go to our next speaker. Welcome Yulia Ovchennikova, an MP. So my question to you, Yulia, you represent the Parliament. What sort of legislative initiatives are there to preserve biodiversity, to ensure proper preservation of natural reserves, and what are measures to broaden those initiatives? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Nice to see many familiar faces. Yes, preserving the nature and helping it recover is among our priorities, also in the meaning of our Euro integration efforts and in the meaning of the Grand Deal. If we go to biodiversity strategy until 2030 in the EU, we will see that at least 30% of land and comparable space of marine territories have to be within the protected, have this protected status. Yes, we also have it here. We work under Ramsar Convention. We have other sorts of resources. But again, we will need to see that biodiversity fund in Ukraine is growing every year in the meaning of UN targets and in the meaning of the reports. They say that more than 400 trillion $400 trillion worth of world revenues depend on nature and natural resources. From here, the need to keep water resources, land resources, plant resources in a condition that ensures survival. Also within the meaning of their importance for economic performance indicators. Because of us going through the most challenging parts of our recent history with this Russian full-scale aggression, we see the enemy destroying on a daily basis the very habitat of us, the natural one, which requires additional priorities to be set also legislatively. This should make into our policies. Like in the EU, they have this horizontal dimension. This is what has been discussed at international events, and we should not forget about these matters. I think that biodiversity will only gain in importance with each passing year. And in terms of what we are doing, just draw attention to the fact that biodiversity in Ukraine is regarded by the EU as a very important factor because Ukraine holds up to 35% of the total biodiversity capacity potential of the whole Europe. 63,000 of rivers, international migration corridors, 50 Ramsar reserves, scores of transborder reserve areas. We have thousands worth of hectares of primordial forests. We have unique steppe areas, and this is our heritage. We have to look after it. Our habitat, our environment must become a value that we all cherish. It is not just because of the requirement from the EU, it's also because it's been a part of our country. Russia's invaders are barbarians, they do not understand that. We have daily risks and challenges. because on the one hand we have the enemy, on the other we have these green commitments. We see the huge damage done by war to our environment on a daily basis, and these are the challenges that are detrimental for our own nature. For our own sake of our recovery, green recovery, we need to have natural resources and the nature at the very heart of our recovery efforts. Otherwise, it will lead to further degradation of our ecosystems. We need to have it in a balanced way, in line with European principles, and values and standards. And as I represent a line subcommittee in the Parliament, I can tell you that it's very important for us to see that no new piece of legislation goes against biodiversity and preservation priorities, whether it is EIA or other such CO2 emissions, other such considerations. We need to continue our work on that. We need to look into the unique nature of our biodiversity heritage. We need to develop the relevant infrastructure for that using available European experience. There are 3 mechanisms available for that. The first one being the European integration itself. We are looking at the association agreements for that purpose. We have the EC reports on Ukraine that clearly show what our priorities should be on the way towards the EU. It provides better understanding of the gaps, legislative gaps, and we have to take the law on Emerald Belt, quite a challenging legislation, but we will have to do it. We have 4 directives and 4 conventions to be adopted and harmonized, and this has to be done this year. Now, the strategy for biodiversity preservation is also of paramount importance for our country. And we need to attract relevant experts, academicians, to create a quality European-style document. In terms of increasing the area of our natural reserves, it begs for open discussions for that, but it has to be done. Now, the question of invasive species. From the EC report, we can clearly see that this is an important measure. For some reason, the Regulatory Oversight Authority did not make this document into force, in action. And I think all the involved experts and parliamentary committee will have to double down on that to see the documents put into good use. In terms of biodiversity, we also need to be looking into humane treatment of animals. As we live in a civilized society, we need to think about animal health, animal well-being, and discussion is long overdue. We move towards the EU, and we need to have more humane laws for animals. Like we had a law to ban too loud fireworks, for example. We need to move further on that. We need to see and monitor if all of our environmental legislations are in line with current European requirements. A project is going to be launched by the Ministry of Digitization, the Ministry of Agrarian Policy, Ministry of Economy, to identify a cheap pet. This is an important step that will be implemented also by the DIA app. In my finishing words, dear colleagues, I'd like to tell you that we move towards united Europe, and we need to further work on this international dimension of the war that we are going through now in terms of proper assessment of damage inflicted by the war. Some initial steps were taken in Reykjavik. Last year, we have Environment Protection Department set up at the Ministry. We have stepped up our efforts to work on close aid of the President Zelensky's peace formula, and we expand our contacts with peer European parliaments for that. Two positive ideas at the end of it. We are looking to attract investments in Ukraine, and green initiatives, biodiversity initiatives are a good way of doing that. We have the project implemented by Ukrainians with the Czech partners on the LIFE project. This is a very important starting point. And we have another project, Horizon, within which 11 countries will have more than 10 million euro to work together on environmental topics, and this is some start of some good result. It will inspire others to come into Ukraine and attract more funds in the country. Our hero soldiers do everything for the country to have the future, and we need to be also looking into the today of the country. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Yulia. So Alexander is no longer the champion per the number of available facts delivered. Yulia joins the race. Now, my organization, U4N, has seen that throughout even despite the war, during the war, the Ukrainian public is still ready to look after animals, to save their lives. We see multiple efforts for that. We saw zoo animals being evacuated from areas under shelling. We see even soldiers trying to shelter animals on the front line, hedgehogs, cats, whoever wanders into the trench. And we move on. I would like other speakers to be mindful of the time. And our next speaker is Viktor Smal, head of the National Agency of Forestry of Ukraine, and it's hard to believe, but we are going to discuss just the topic of forestry and woods in Ukraine. Why? Because this part of our nature provides the, well, dire, but the most vivid view of the war aftermaths. It's much easier to say scorched woods, heavily mined woods, suffering from the wars. My question is about the current condition of the forestry economy in Ukraine and what are the prospects?
Well, thank you for the question. Greetings. I'm happy to take this opportunity in order to tell you about the advantages, about some of the achievements and the prospects of our actions. Talking about the forestry, I would like to start talking from the standpoint of kind of a chain of traceability. So we want to have as much transparent internal market as possible in order to prepare the wood that is supplied for export using the tools that I'm going to introduce. There's only 7 steps, but that resembles the kind of global experience, the lessons learned. And the combination we are about to develop in Ukraine is unique. So step number 1, that's the kind of most fundamental thing. That is the counting of the resources and the counting of forests. Unfortunately, I have to say that until now, we're still using the old methods for calculating the forest resources and how they grow, but there are modern technologies. So this is the concept called LIDAR, which is remote area scanning. As the result of this area scanning, we have a 3D map of forest, and it can pinpoint every single tree on the map. So we understand that there are trees. We have the information on their diameter, height, nature, and the digital map of the area. That's the big advantage that allows us to plan the next forestry actions. The Western countries that are actively using that, particularly Latvia, they're using this data in order to plan the forestry activities for the next 120 years, with due consideration to the climate changes as well. So in 2024, we'll start the industrial scanning using this remote scanning tools and technologies, and we'll be using its results for the next steps. So let's move on. That's the kind of wood cutting ticket. So this is something that we've already developed. It took us several months, and we've launched the system all around Ukraine, and starting from November 2023. We've already issued over 10,000 electronic or digital woodcutting tickets. It's not about digitalization, it's a change of paradigm, because before present, the woodcutters could be issuing their own tickets by themselves. Now it all changes. Our territorial bodies are the only agencies who would be able to issue the digital woodcutting ticket. So it's very easy, whether it's legal woodcutting or illegal woodcutting. So we launch the patrols, or when we have any doubts about the legality of the woodcutting, we can easily verify whether the people have digital woodcutting ticket. So the system cannot be cheated. So it's very easy to check the legality of every woodcutting. Why is that important? Because now all the forest users will have equal terms and conditions. And it's important also to define the traceability, because every ticket involves the scope that was gathered as the result of the single woodcutting, meaning the amount of all the tickets issued, it is equal to a certain amount. So any other expert processing scopes would need to be equal to the amount of tickets issued. Then the production mechanism, that's still something that we're working. It's a transition from manual work to mechanized work. And I'm not talking about like the effectiveness and safety, but it's about traceability. Why is that important? Because modern equipment allows to do the accounting of the wood which is being produced. So you can see already some of the logics behind our actions. So we start counting from the very first step all the reserves that we have, and it allows us to do some sort of predictions and forecasting. The second shows the whole scope of product of wood produced based on these tickets. The third step would allow us to register the amount of wood that is already produced. Then the fourth step, which is a very kind of large, so we'll have 2 slides on that. That's logistics and transportation. This is a very important and sensitive aspect whenever we're talking about the transparent market. What have we done already? Well, currently, in 2021, we have an instruction on e-accounting of wood, and we've standardized the electronic shipment papers for the wood. So in 2023, we've introduced something new. There's the photo registration requirement. So every day, the different enterprises would create a lot of these shipment papers, and they would add the photos of this wood. So we receive on the daily basis these photos for our database. database. Why do we need this? That's to simplify the mechanism for our law enforcement agencies, to simplify the mechanism for verification of the wood. Because if you take a look at the shipment papers, there's a lot of, information mentioned, which is very specialized. Information on the kind of lot, on many other woods. So it's very hard for the law enforcement officers to kind of learn what it really means, what's mentioned on those shipment documents. But it's very easy because every shipment has a unique, look. That is why now the police or other representatives of law enforcement agencies, including the public, because they can verify everything without, going. You can see kind of a truck driving or taking the wood. You can easily verify whether this truck is supposed to drive this wood or not supposed, or if it's supposed, how it should look like. So that's one of the new steps, and it demonstrates pretty high effectiveness, and they promote the forest users to transport only the legal batches, so to say, of the wood products. Now we're working to equip all the forest trucks with GPS trackers. Now, this is required in order to have kind of the full picture of how many forest trucks do we have. Besides, there will be information on the badge, on the shipment documents, and everything. So, I would like to underline that this is related to all the wood tracks, not only public, but the private as well. All the kind of sole proprietors, all the limited liability companies, all of their trucks will need to have the GPS trackers. We need to see the movement, the route, so that we would be able to understand where this truck is driving to. What else do we need to have in order to have this system as flawless one? We need to develop several digital tools. One of them is called like an electronic ticket. So it would allow the truck driver, the wood truck, to go to the loading place. So when we can see the drive, the truck moving towards the forest, it will have a need or kind of a substantiation. Why is that moving towards the forest? When it arrived to the place where the wood is being loaded, then they will have a separate shipment. So, without the creation of this shipment papers, with photos, the forest truck would not, or the wood truck would not be able to leave the forest. So we are going to create a comprehensive bench of documents, and the verification is going to be done with the satellites. If the wood truck is starting to move without the shipment documents, then administrators of the system, they will see the signal, warning signal, and they would see that one of the forest trucks or wood trucks is violating the shipment rules. Then the electronic accounting of the wood, maybe you've heard about this. This is a kind of a digital citadel of our forest industry, and it covers a lot of databases. It knows all about the forest cutting tickets, about origin certificates and others. So it's responsible to answer the question, how many who produced the wood and whom it was sold to. Not many understand this, but I would like to underline the following fact. We were pretty much successful in digitalizing the part of the market which is related to the forest users. We've created this forest cutting tickets, the electronic shipment documents, then there's an electronic accounting of the wood, then we've did the digital certificate that I'll be mentioning later on, but when we are selling the wood, and let me remind you, starting from 2021, we're selling it only online at licensed trading platforms. So at this moment, we are kind of losing the understanding about what is happening to the wood on the internal market. Like on the one hand, we have digitalized the process related to the forest users, but whenever we're talking about the processing, about the business, about the export, we have a very significant gap that everyone is using. Well, not everyone, but the one who wants to use it, he knows how to do that. So the first step, we would need to extend the electronic counting of the wood to all the processing facilities. We would need to modernize the system, and this year we'll start doing that. And what else are we lacking? We would need to introduce a new platform, new tool, which would be called the electronic declaration system for any operations with the wood. And it would cover all the entities working on the wood market of Ukraine. All those doing the production of the wood, that would also be related to all those who's selling, who do reselling of the wood, who's producing anything out of the wood. So all the participants of the market, irrespective of their status, they will have such a chance, kind of a right and the obligation to declare all of their operations of the wood on the respective platform. Well, I believe you understand all this chain, all these declared operations. They should match with number 1 indicators, with number 2 indicators, with the amount of the sold wood, the amount of the wood for exports, and all of these operations will be compared in real-time mode with the documents that we have. So this woodcutting ticket, like, it can be, flexible. It covers a certain amount of the wood product. If several exporters are referencing to the same woodcutting ticket that someone has a right to reference that, well, the other cannot do that because it won't have a logical reference to this document that we've elaborated. So the final step number 6, it's going to be a declaration system. This one is effectively working already for the public officials. We file the declaration, we show our operations, our incomes and spendings. The same thing we'll have for the parties on the wood market. For those willing to work openly and transparently, they will have all the tools, everything will be clear. Those who won't accept the new conditions, they won't have any possibilities to do that. This step number 7, that's the final part of our chain, and this is something that we've completed already. We've launched this in December 2023, and as of now, the certificates of the origin of the wood, there's already around 5,000 certificates were issued, and that means over 5,000 of shipments went out starting from December having those documents. What is the certificate of origin? That's the main document that every exporter needs if he wants to export the wood abroad. So export is impossible without the certificate. How it used earlier, there was a paper document. So our territorial agencies who issued those documents, they were dealing only with papers. Besides, they had no legitimate reasons to verify those papers and to understand whether this or that document is legal or not. Well, everything has changed in December 2023. Now the exporters are dealing with the absolutely clear kind of digital history. So it just asks that you would need to prove the traceability. So we have 2 initial documents. That's this ticket for woodcutting and the first shipment documents. If the exporter cannot prove the origin of the shipment that is supplied, then the export is impossible. So I would also like to tell you some more about how they launch. It took a couple of weeks for exporters to to understand how the system is working. Okay, well then there will be no story about the experts and how they accepted these rules. Well, thank you for your attention, and that's it. for me. Well, thank you, Victor. And be ready that you'll be joined by many on the coffee break to hear the story. Surely, we'll have we have a very interesting panel. So let's move on. Because we'll go to the next speaker, to Mikhailo Genchuk, the head of the State Agency for Water Resources of Ukraine. So the question about the conditions and perspectives of reforming the water industry, the water resources of Ukraine. And please remember the timing. So allow me to introduce the multi-level concept for reforming the water supply system of Ukraine. Currently, Ukraine is ranking 85 place out of over 140 in terms of water supply level. That's a mid-level. The number of rivers, well, that was already mentioned. The current infrastructure is fairly diversified. It's over 40,000 kilometers of open channels, over 43,000 of pipelines. There's a lot of pumping stations, protecting dams, and hydrotechnical facilities. At the same time, I would like to mention that as of now, the wear of infrastructure is around 93%, the wear out of infrastructure. As for the current organizational structure, for the water supply system, it's fairly difficult. We have regional offices for water resources, then we have directives for the production of reservoirs into regional departments for managing water resources that are currently reorganized. We have around 13,000 people working for us. Talking about the disadvantages of our current system, there's a lack of funding, there's a lack of control of the use of water, the awareness of the infrastructure, and the lack of unique product. We're currently working on the development of the vision, that is the strategy for the water sector, and one of the options to overcome the available disadvantages is dividing the function of implementing the state policy and kind of use of the water, because we're considering the possibility of establishing a special economic entity like a national joint stock company. So the purpose of this national joint stock company would be to create the product, which is 1 cubic meter of water, the accounting of water, the reduction of the water use, the optimization of the organizational processes, and the management of infrastructure. So the goal of the project are as follows. According to the assessment of international experts, we would need $1.4 billion in modernization and refurbishment of the infrastructure. We would need to optimize the losses through the introduction of new equipment and new management system. And surely we want to supply the economy by increasing the level of production of the equipment that is required to refurbish the infrastructure. According to international experts, the possible economic effect could be 1.2% of the additional increase of GDP. So the tools are the introduction of this system called e-water, the control over the use of water resources through automated accounting, digitalization of the water balances, and automatic accounting of the water consumption indicators. So we want to have it all digitalized. We want to have a monitoring of the water resources that would be accessible to everyone, so that everyone would understand which region has what level of or what quality of the water. And we would need to have the maps of projects of revitalization. We need to map out the implementation of the EU directives.
Restructuring of the water supply organization looks as follows. Water bodies and the pumping stations are used to supply water to the water distribution points, each of them being equipped with metering devices. It will make into a national juristic company that will be wholly owned by the government. From there, the water will go to end consumers, individuals, agriculture, businesses, investors will be able to invest into a variety of projects that I'm going to briefly describe now and get some ROIs. Funds will be secured through international donor assistance, loans, grant facilities, all available sources of funding. Some of the key projects involve comprehensive flood preventing measures for the total value of $700 million. It will involve a refurbishment of embankments and water retaining structures. 1 hryvnia invested there will ultimately save up to 10 hryvnias of recovery efforts. We will be also looking into modernization and renovation of water supply and main lines. About $206 million will be needed for that. Some of the channels we have in mind, like the Severno-Krymsky and others, are temporary under occupation, but we hope they will be deoccupied. There are also projects on hydropower generation, different types of them, for the total of more than 50 megawatts and repayment period within 10 years span. PV's installation on water bodies. This will offer more than 100 gigawatts a year of additional electricity and 6-year repayment period. We're also considering the possibility of growing salix along the water channels over the space of about 4,000 hectares. More than $2 million will be received after the project becomes profitable after 3 years. We also have a roadmap, doing calculations to backstop legal regulations approved, and we are working on the concept. As soon as it is agreed and approved with government authorities, the parliament and the public, we hope it will be finally adopted as a separate law by the parliament, and then other legal regulations and bylaws will have to be made compliant with it, and that will kickstart operations of this national joint stock company. We intend to fully implement the project until the end of this year. Quite an ambitious goal, one would say, but it is quite doable with proper support of the public, the government, and the international community. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mikhailo. You were concise and to the point, and we have just a bit of time left to hear on important topics from 2 more speakers. Please welcome Marina Surkova, the president of the Association of Animal Protection Organizations in Ukraine. She will be speaking about how to defend animal rights in Ukraine and what changes are needed in this domain. Yeah, thank you, Alexander. Defending the animal rights in Ukraine. Well, from the bats, I'm chairing the relevant Association of Animal Protection Organizations. We have 46 organizations as our members across Ukraine. They are united by a common goal of animal protection. So it may seem too general as a statement, because if we speak about animal rights, Yulia was right when she mentioned that under the current legislation, animals are objects, and they have no rights under the current legislation again, while being living creatures and being able to feel pain, horror, all other emotions that we share with them. They have no rights, and they have no voice. So we do our best to be the defenders, protectors, and their voice for the purpose. Still, I'd like to outline that animals enjoy natural rights. Back in 2006, a law was adopted in Ukraine to protect animals from grievous and harmful treatment that kick-started like official level of our animal protection activities. At the beginning, animal activists were people well in their 50s, mostly looking after cats, dogs. Now the animal protection activities can be seen as covering a wide spectrum of animals. We have three categories of them, like pets, cats, dogs, agricultural animals, and wild ones. The wild ones being both those in captivity and living in their natural habitats. Question is, do they all enjoy similar levels of protection? According to the law, yes. We also have criminal responsibility for bodily harm or killing of an animal, and it may bring up to 8 years behind bar, which is the highest punishment worldwide. Not a single other country having that. I am pleased about it. I think it will help the public humanize, and it helps the people feeling more responsibility over animals. But again, back to the question of whether all of the animals enjoy some level of protection. On the one hand, again, yes, because if one kills a wild animal in captivity, or a pet, or an agricultural animal, and if the killing is done in an unusually inhumane way, there will be responsibility. But the most protection is reserved for the pets. Agricultural animals have a bit less of it, and our Ukrainian national legislation has lesser regulation in terms of agricultural animals. Wild animals kept in captivity, have more or less good level of protection. In 2008, we were able, jointly with MPs, to push a bill. It was to ban the keeping of lions, bears, other large voracious animals in captivity. The least protected animals in Ukraine are the wild ones living in their natural habitats. We still have hunting practices here, and the killing of an animal deemed the one fit for hunting, we call it legitimized killing, but it is still there. Now, there are also lab animals that are being used in labs, and they endure huge suffering throughout their lifespan. Wild animals may enjoy at least part of their lives in a normal way, and lab animals have it the worst. So the animal protection movement is rather developed in Ukraine because the state pays little attention to matters of animal protection. The police, back in Soviet time, also in post-Soviet Republic, there has been a very popular perception of stray animals as some rubbish that does not deserve any protection. We see that the police have started shifting their behaviors. We do their best to support them in that, but the animal protection movement is still very much needed. Our activists are exactly the pioneers in matters of animal protection. We collaborate with the police. We try to teach them how to handle situations. You can jot down a very nice piece of legislation, but it will remain a dead document, not observed or implemented by anyone. Meanwhile, we need the police to be able to effectively use the legislation to mitigate the situation. And animal protection movements does its best to cooperate with local governments, with central government, other institutions to bring more refinements into the legal regulatory field. Again, initially it was just a matter of individual volunteers, babushkas and others, 60 plus, doing something. Now we have many more young people, 18, even younger than that, actively being engaged in that. So the average age of our members is at about 25. We see better gender balance, more gays joining us, and the movement has become professional in terms of us having all sorts of experts, even doctors of sciences, in some animal sciences, in jurisprudence, which makes us better suited to help the central government, local self-government in their efforts to protect animals, to show everyone that we can be a civilized country. We were able to integrate many breakthrough regulations and norms into our legislation. Some of them were borrowed from the European one. Together with Yulia, we were able to push through with the Bill 2351. We have one legislative innovation prohibiting people with previous convictions of cruelty against animals to have more of the animals. We have some other bans implemented, like the one to leave the animal outside the shop, the ban on keeping animal inside vehicles in unfavorable conditions, like in heat season. Together with the Ministry for Environment, we are working on a piece of legislation to protect wolves within the spirit of Berne Convention, and we thank Alexander Krasnoludsky for his involvement. Under the convention, wolves are a protected species. Well, in some countries they are hunting animals, but there are some quotas for that. If we look at the area, the whole area of Ukraine, and the number of animals within Ukraine, you will see that the specific number of wolves per, say, square kilometer will be lesser than in most of the countries members of the Berne Convention. So we do hope to start by labeling wolves as the hunting animal that will have some quota limitations, and we hope we will move on from there to have it as endangered species. We work together with Yulia on additional measures, on that we try to be as helpful as we can. We do hope that the government hears us on that. We do want zoo police in the country. We have been told this is not the right time for it, but defending one's life is always relevant, is always on time. And I think with more attention towards the lives of animals, there will be some positive change also towards human individuals. And if we are better able to protect animals, it will mean better protection for humans as well. Thank you, Marina. And we have one more panelist. Please welcome Sergei Yuzvenko, Director of the Arboretum Reserve Mezhegirya. I plead with you, Sergei, though, to stick to the time allotted, because we are overstaying the time with our quite interesting panel, thus limiting other panels in their ability to deliver. So please be very concise in describing what has been achieved so far in Mezhigiri and what are your plans. Good afternoon, dear friends, dear guests. So I represent a recreational national reserve that has the national listed status with a special protection status, actually, in terms of its operation. It's being coordinated by the Ministry for Environment Protection. We are located in Novy Petrivci, Kyiv Oblast. The adoption of laws by the Parliament attests to some practical steps to restore responsible and democratic attitude towards these matters. And we had a law signed by President Zelensky to restore people's ownership of this jewel of natural habitats. The law adopted specifically to safeguard the complex I represent offers strong protection with proper regard of its natural, historic, aesthetic and other value, contributing to proper protection of everything. The history of this park is unique. This is the first case in the history of our independent country. The area used to be like private residence of the President of Ukraine, and now we see it being restored to national ownership as a national reserve. Every plant planted there, every facility, every infrastructure, well, they used to be manifestations of corruptions at the top of the country. A good example of human greed of those who have unlimited access to government funds. The building of the facility costed the nation 1.2 billion hryvnias minimum. Now we plan to use this also as a measure to visualize the scope of corruption that the country went through. It should be visible to every visitor from Ukraine, from abroad. Check this bonsai on the left. It costed almost 250,000 hryvnias to have it built and created there. Or the set of ponds on the right that costed about 8,000 hryvnias a square meter. It is not comparable against the meager salaries of people, and we will have these figures included in the park guides for every visitor to better understand that everything in the park can be really priced as a weight of gold equivalent. There are multiple plant and animal species kept there, many of them having protected status. They have some unique oaks from 400 to 500 years old. We have a unique 100 years old Acer ring there. The territory of the park is on the border with the Emerald Belt, which allows cohabitation of a number of unique plants and animal species protected under Resolution number 6 of Berne Convention on the protection of natural flora and fauna in Europe.
Okay, so the park confirms its belonging to the World and Global Natural Reserve community. So some of the species that are protected, well, 36 species are provided under the are secured or protected in accordance to the Berne Convention. Then 10 species are included into the first and second annex of the Berne Convention. Then 4 species are listed in the Red Book of Ukraine. 1 species is included into the first annex of the Washington Treaty on the Prevention of the Trade of Certain Flora and Fauna. The age structure of measure here is confirmation that Ukraine, as a European country, has over 10,000 years of history from the standpoint of tourist attraction. We need to underline this. Mezhyhirya is a wonderful place close to Dnieper, in the valley in between of the mountains. This is where the Kievo-Mezhyhirskiy monastery was founded, that existed during the times of the Kiev Rus and until 1937. Started with the Kiev Princess of Rurikovichi, the Princess Olha. It was Princess Olha who founded the Mezhyhirya monastery, which is truly very important for the history and the heritage, because the Roman, because some of the books that she used were initially originated from the monastery. There is also a legend that Mezhyhirya has the library of Yaroslav the Wise that was once hidden in the underneath the monastery. The kings of Poland and Sweden have issued the security documents to the monastery. Mr. Serhiy, we are very limited in time, so I guess we won't be able to listen to the rest of your presentation. So please, we are already told that the next panel is very soon. So if you go to slide 8. So the modern Mezhyhirya is a unique park which is available for everyone to visit. It's a great example of parks. It's the place for meeting of international experts. It's a place for rehabilitation of adults and youth. It's the center for the environmental education. And surely it's one of the tourist attractions of Ukraine. We are happy to kind of cooperate. We are open for proposals. Thank you for your attention. I'm very grateful to the panelists, and we'll be passing the floor in the very end. I would like to remind that we had Alexander Krasnoludsky, the first deputy of the Ministry of Environment, Yulia Ovchinnikova, the member of Parliament of Ukraine, and you can support the panelists with your applause. We had Viktor Smar, the head of the State Agency for Forest Resources of Ukraine. We had Mikhail Yanchuk, head of the State Agency for Water Resources of Ukraine. We had Marina Surukova, the president of the All-Ukrainian Association of Public Organizations, and Serhiy Yuzvenko, the director of the park called Mezhyhirya. So we are very grateful to you. So big thanks to you, Alexander, for this session. We are grateful to the panelists as well. Please take your seats in the audience. Alexander, thank you for keeping the time. Yes, we are kind of running out of the time a bit, but we'll try to make sure we'll do everything in time. So we'll have some presentation by Yuri Mokhovets, General Director of the State Enterprise Forest of Ukraine. By the way, talking about the forest, but after this panel, I will never look at the Ukrainian forest as something that has no declarations or no digital processes. Now, Talking about the LIDAR, by the way, the iPhones have implemented something like that. It doesn't mean that you can digitalize the forest as well and help the Ukrainian state in this case, but it's wonderful that such technologies are being used by the Ukrainian state enterprises. So, an interesting moment, I'm not sure if you've seen this moment, all the panelists were best prepared, I think, for their statements, because we've seen the significant number of presentations from our panelists, and we're waiting for one more presentation on the forest. So we are almost close to the middle of our event. We're currently going to have two more presentations by Yuri Bolokhovets and by Yevgenia Popovich. And she's representing the Department of Digital Transformation. And she will have a video plus the presentation. And I guess we'll need some more time to prepare this. Now, whether Yuri is ready with his presentation. Okay. At least he would need a microphone for us to hear. And for all of you been sitting too much, I just wanted to say that after those presentations, we will have a large break, maybe in around 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because we are out of the timing already, but we have to finish in due time as planned. Let me remind you as well that it's already the second forum called United for Nature. It's called Agenda for Ukraine. The previous forum took place in October together with the Office of the Prosecutor General. It was called United for Justice, United for Nature. Now, this event is an important platform for holding Russia accountable and restoring the fair peace. And today we've already heard the representatives of the diplomatic establishments of various countries. We had ministers of environment of Romania, Bulgaria, and Moldova. And, of course, these are representing the countries that we have common relationship with, and we surely understand that the environment and nature are borderless, just as Ukrainian forests will tie us to our neighboring countries. So, Yuri, you have the floor. So, Yuri Bolokhovets, the General Manager of State Enterprise Forests of Ukraine. Greetings. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to have this presentation to inform on some of the outcomes and the plans for our activity. So the reform of the forest industry is something we required so much. A lot of years ago, there were several attempts by the previous government, but indeed, 2022 was a decisive year for us. We have received three fundamental documents. That's the decree of the President, the decision of National Security and Defense of Ukraine, and finally the resolution of the government that clearly instructed us with the reform of the industry. That was a pretty difficult and ambitious task. And clearly, we understood there were many challenges and there were many questions about timeliness of this reform, but as the Euro Commissioner said, there's no bad time for good reforms. So, the main tasks for us, for our team, were as follows. The establishment of a new structure that would be aligned with the European kind of standards that would be able to secure the forests more effectively, to increase the forests by attaching new territories, new forests, in order to preserve the biodiversity. We will never create the artificial forest that will be better than the natural one. And, of course, the better management of the forestry by having more nature-oriented approaches. And in January 2023, we've started this newly established state enterprise, Forests of Ukraine. We'll show you some brief information on the results we managed to achieve over 2023. And this is the work of a big number of people. The main task of any enterprise, surely, is receiving income, and the income allows to kind of have a turnover, to have more investments into the restoration of the forests. So, before the Reformation, 360 forest enterprises, they gave a total income of around 200 million hryvnia. You can see that on the slide. Well, if you take a look at the income, that's the first one. Then the state enterprises from the south and in the east, they received around 350 million hryvnia as state support. So it wasn't an efficient industry for the state. So over the first year of the work of the state enterprise, we have received 3.2 billion income. We are not receiving any state funds because Ukraine has other directions to spend money, but still the enterprises have significantly developed their financial condition. The income allows us to invest more money into the protection of forests, protection against forests. We can see some results already into the establishment of the modern European kind of seed protection system and seed collection system that allows us to restore the damaged forests in a fast manner. Then the construction of the sophisticated recreational infrastructure and the development of the forest roads. That would allow to reduce the cost of the wood products, and it's also very important for the social development of the remote territories and development of the recreational possibilities. Now, as for the payment of taxes, that was one of the conditions of the regulation of the Cabinet of Ministers. Before the reform, the companies were paying around 6 million hryvnias as taxes, and we've already paid 10.5 billion hryvnia as income tax. So surely that's some sort of a burden for the enterprise, but that's our contribution to the national economy. With the development of financial indicators, we've managed to increase the salary. So this is not the maximum indicators. We have ambitious goals for next year. There will be also a salary increase for the low-level workers, those who work directly in the forest. The maid salary was around 8,000 hryvnia, and during the first year, we had the average salary of 22,000 hryvnia. Now, the key task for the forest employees is the protection of forests against the fires. That's the main protection, in part related with forest protection, forest security. On the average, the enterprises had around 14,000 hectares of forests per year. This indicator was different. There were 1919, 1920 with record-breaking forests, over 50,000 hectares all around the country. That was a big challenge for us. So what do we need to do in order to reduce the fires? We've learned the experience of Turkey, the Baltic countries, and we've selected some key indicators for ourselves. We understand that we need to identify and respond very fast to any outbreak of fire, and surely to offer some alternatives to the people, because 99% of the forest fires are human factor. That's the violation of the fire rules. We've ensured the monitoring over the pine forests. We've ensured that every forest enterprise has a transport, has the tools that allow to extinguish the fire very fast. We've not just the limitation we're not just limited the visit of people to the forest, but instead we've constructed a lot of recreational facilities. There's over 100 of them that were constructed previously here, so that the people may be using them to have recreation in the forest. Unfortunately, we had some tragic events when people were dying in the forests by neglecting the rules related to the mining of the forests, and in 1 year we've managed to reduce the number of fires by 30 times. Now, talking about the restoration recovery of forests, we have a lot of forests that were damaged or destroyed. A lot of hectares were affected by the combat operations, and over 1 million hectares of forests are mined forests or some sort of limited forest. There's some limitations imposed by the military against them. Now, restoring in a high-quality manner of those forests, that's our major task. And there was an initiative by the President of Ukraine, it's called the Green Ukraine. That's the initiative providing for the planting of around 1 million trees, 1 billion trees, in fact, of new trees over a certain period of time. Surely the war had impacted that initiative, so we've kind of delayed that by 1 year, but this program is being effectively implemented now. And you can see on the slide that we've managed to double the number of plantings, the establishment of new forests, as well as the repair of those plantings that were damaged by the war. The state enterprise Forests of Ukraine is surely supporting the armed forces of Ukraine. In 2022, we've provided some supplies for the armed forces for a total amount of over 1 billion hryvnia. So that's the resources that we've provided directly from our enterprises. Primarily, that's wood, that's cars, many others. In 2023, it was also a large amount of wood, over 100,000 square meters or cubic meters of wood that were primarily used for the construction of the fortification construction. Transport, over 120 vehicles were allocated to the armed forces of Ukraine. Surely we're working on the international assistance, and our colleagues from Baltic countries, from Poland, they are making a significant contribution in support of the armed forces of Ukraine.
We continue with those contacts and expand them. That's it from my side in a nutshell, because we've been pressed for it, but I'm ready to field your questions, if any. Thank you, Yuri. There will be questions definitely, but maybe after this official part. Thank you for this information and fact-laden presentation. Mr. Balochovets from the Forestry Administration. And please welcome Evgenia Popovich, Director of the Digital Transformation and Public Services Department at the Ministry for Environment Protection. The paper world is detrimental and dangerous for those who want to survive or want to change it. Meet the digital world, friendly to people, businesses. Ecosystema is a range of convenient electronic services for business persons. It has been in operation for 2 years and already has results to report. It allows submitting and receiving documents. More than 60,000 of them have been already received. 2,850,000 days have been saved by businesses. 7.5 million pages were saved from being printed. More than 880 trees are being preserved each day thanks to the system. At the electronic registries, the impossibility of forging documents, no intermediaries when decisions are being made. Decisions can be made in just one day. Digital services are being used by almost 90% of applicants. Ecosystem, unique electronic platform. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Yes, digitization of environment and ecological matters continues, and we have 5 key points of our ecosystem. No paper, no corruption, no refusals, no weekends, no forged documents or signatures. It is operating 24/7, unlike previous time when we did have weekends. Speaking of the past year and how it was for the system, I think it was a breakthrough year for our flagship electronic product. We have 1 million of Ukrainians using the system, and this is a signature amount. We have 900,000 visitors from the public. We have more than 100,000 of business users. We have 12 policies in place, and we can openly claim that we've issued 70,000 more documents. We have a registry of emissions and polluters transfer. We committed the previous year to include the public into the monitoring of any environment-related actions. It started in 2025, but it became operational, full operation in 2023. And the registry allows registering polluters and any changes in the status. We have also a registry, an EIA registry, which is available to community members, ensuring their participation in decisions making. The year 2023 also saw the launch of a waste management system, version 1.0. It also included paperless declaration function. We've introduced better stock taking of pollutions using IMAP protocol. In 2023, the user cabinets had all types of documents included for everyone willing to operate within this environmental domain. We also boast an e-forest system that is able to provide wood certificates. In terms of waste management, there is a tool in the system to provide security and safety certificates for waste, also waste transported abroad for processing. Some 5 key services include the Oferta, the agreement on the system use between relevant institutions and ministries. It can be signed online. We have an electronic waste accounting system, and it will be able to automatically generate waste management and accumulation reforms. Waste transfer service is also available. We have people-less test operation of the system, providing permits on atmospheric emissions. I think it will be in great demand among businesses who regularly spend a lot of time waiting for paper documents issued to them. And we also are going to offer an online report based on those permits. To summarize the results of 2023, so we have 7.5 million of pages not printed thanks to the system. We've saved nearly 3 million days, waiting days for businesses. We allowed saving nearly 300,000 liters of petroleum. Petrol, sorry. And here is a glimpse of some new services to be introduced on the system. Any economic agent will be able to get all the documents online using the system. The bodies in charge of issuing permits and authorizations, they will be offered also new functionality. We also have a service called Environmental Threat, Ekozagroza. We launched it with the advent of the full-scale invasion. The service allows our nationals to check for air raid alerts, to know better about first-hand reaction in case of any sort of environmental threat. In 2023, this system has been updated with some added functionality. We have 5,000 environmental monitoring outposts to look for air, water, and radiation pollution. And some 89 countries worldwide are using the system for their own purpose, and we are not going to take a break with it. We want to institute public control over polluters. We want to create so-called environmental passports for practically every dot on the map, and we want to institute a better water and air monitoring capacity with air quality index in place. Thank you. Thank you, Evgenia. I think after the presentation like this, the next panel moderator will have to use some tablet, not the bunch of papers I've used. Shame on me. And we thank Evgenia from the Digital Transformation Department at the Ministry for Environmental Protection. And we have about 40 minutes of recess. I will be happy to see you back in 40 minutes.